I think I always wanted to hear myself on the radio, and then when I finally did, it was a very exciting moment.
You know, it started like a lot of people, being a kid and turning on the radio and just hearing this amazing music and saying, I want to do that.
I wanted this more than anything in my life, to try to create records.
I've played on recording sessions, you know, that are really historic, like Tell It Like It Is.
Tommy Bell and the Gamble and Huff organization in Philadelphia when the Philadelphia sound was popular.
Now I'm celebrating 50 years as a guitar player, singer with Bo Diddley.
I played on all of Garth Brooks' records. I helped create the sound of Brooks and Dunn. I played on their first records. I've recorded with Shania Twain, George Jones.
I played on, I just can't remember all the many hits that I've been on, but I've been on numerous ones. And my biggest regret, you know, is that I have not received any performance royalties as a musician.
We think of someone like Nat King Cole, and every Christmas people hear the wonderful song where he says, "Chestnuts roasting on an open fire," composed by Mel Torme. Okay? Mel Torme received lots of money for that. But none of the musicians who are on that receive any money now for just being on that recording session.
I think I always thought as a studio musician that you went down and you played on hit records, and if you played on a hit record, you got royalties and you could make a living and try to build an annuity.
I mean, the guy who played that great organ part in Runaway doesn't get something every time. You know, George Harrison doesn't get anything for a lead on a Beatles song.
But what people don't realize is, as a studio musician, we just go in and make up the arrangements. We create the music.
It's a big, long process. You know, you get it out to the musicians, you bring it into the studio, you gather them over to your house. You say, here's the latest thing. And then they think about it, and they contribute ideas. And you move verses around. Maybe you change the melody. Maybe you put it in a different key. Somebody says, slow it down. Do it as, you know, in cut time. Why don't we change it to a waltz rather than a 2/4 piece? All these things that ideas and decisions of which are made right then, but each of these musicians are bringing a lifetime of experience into that room.
And at the end of the day, we sign a union time card and we're paid a wage for that. And that's the end of our involvement in the project.
All the product that I put out there as a session player and playing behind, I've never seen a dime.
I only got paid for the time we played and the sessions that we did. But as far as getting paid for radio play, airplay as it was called, for many years, we never received 1 cent.
If I had a nickel for every person that said, "I heard you," I could probably be out on the beach right now. Because I wouldn't have to work as much, because, you know, you play and you get paid to play, but then you record it and people just use our product over and over. They think nothing of it, but that's how we make a living.
I think everybody who listens to the radio, whether they're streaming it on their computer, whether they're listening to their XM or Sirius, whether they're listening to the local AM station, they know that those programs are driven by the music. That's why you tune in. That's why you watch. That's why you listen.
Without our talent, many of these records would not have made money, have sold as much as they did, because the success of a recording largely depends upon the skills of the musicians that are involved in the recording process.
I overheard this story the other day about Garth Brooks, and that he had supposedly not realized that all the years that he was getting royalty checks for his when he would be on the radio, and he found out suddenly that his band had never seen a dime of it, and he actually sat down and wrote checks himself. Now, honestly, I don't know that an artist really should have to do something like that, but if they became our advocates, then maybe they could get everybody to say, well, you know, it really isn't fair that we're basically stealing this from you and not giving you anything back.
our copyright laws have been very, very antiquated for many, many years.
We are not in compliance with the rest of the countries around the world.
I've done a lot of work with European artists and artists in most of the other industrialized countries, and they are amazed that musicians and featured artists are not compensated at all for their creative work.
The world sees value in it. The United States seems to see no value in it, thinking that since we play music, that it should be free.
You know, I get it from all the other countries. Pakistan, India, Egypt, I mean, it's unbelievable.
You know, I hear stories about musicians over in Europe that get a nice check every year for music that is played on the radio.
The general public has just got to be aware of what it takes to make a living in music, and what goes on behind the green door. People just automatically think, oh, you musicians, y'all playing all these records. They just think we're getting money hand over fist.
There's this misconception. People think just because you put CDs out, you play, they get played on the radio, they think you're just rolling in dough, and you're not.
You know, there are people who are voting on this. And if they hear from the general public that, you know, we got to fix this. You know, I want that guy who played the organ part on Runaway to get his fair share.
The concept of a performance royalty for musicians who work on a record is something that's been talked about for a long time, and unfortunately has never happened until now.
There's a proposal for us to make money every time we're in on the radio instead of the way it's been forever. You can actually get paid a few cents for what you're doing on the radio. Isn't that great? You need to support this. Tell everybody you know.
Well, the first thing that I've been telling people is, you know, and asking them, are you a composer? Are you a performer? Do you possibly have recordings that you have made? Have you made recordings, say, your own CDs? If that's the case, I tell them that they need to contact Sound Exchange.
Now is the time for us to address all the grievance in the past and make it right. It's only right that the musicians be fairly compensated for the work that they do on recording sessions.
To the people who make this amazing music that's the soundtrack of our lives, they're due.
And I just urge all members of Congress to consider that musicians are working people, studio musicians are working people. We have a wage that is mandated by our union, but we have no provisions whatsoever to achieve any compensation for the work that we've created.
Well, how come everybody gets paid but the musicians? And we do the basic functions. We supply the music.